Our next speaker is Aidan Holmgren from the Aidan Holmgren from the UCLA, and his talk is entitled "Ring Composition in Lower Land Luwian." Please.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon. The questions addressed here will concern Luwian ritual incantations from the Anatolian lower land. I've provided a map for you here on the handout. Their proposed poetic qualities and their organization into rings. The questions include, do lower land ritual practitioners structure their ritual incantations into united cohesive wholes, as we've just heard from the Rig Veda? Does ring composition play a role in this organization? And what do lower land incantations in their written form tell us about their composition? Can we define a sort of typology of lower land rings? Turning the page. The existence of native Anatolian poetry is supported by Hittite texts which employ poetic devices, formulae, and meter, as in one below, the Song of Nessa, and in two. I'll just read the English. Clothes of Nessa, bind them on me, bind. Bring me down with my mother, bind me, bind. Bring me down with my nurse, bind me, bind. Separately, we have two. O Lord of the tongue, where are you going? And the response to this is, I go to the road for devouring it. I go to the lion for magically fixing it. I go to the flower for reaping it. I go to the man for speaking. Now, one, the Song of Nessa was likely composed before the Hittites relocated from their old capital of Nessa, see my map, to Hattusa, the relatively new historical capital. And this transition probably happened sometime around 1650 BCE, which would imply that the Song of Nessa belongs to an old, developed poetic tradition amongst Hittite speakers. One also shows the quantitative phrasal stress meter of Hittite epic, which contains 4 stressed prosodic constituents in a line divided by a central caesura. I've provided this in one for you. Meanwhile, example 2 has a sort of alliterative ring. The first and final lines frame the intervening discourse with words in lalla, while the first words of the middle 3 lines contain words in al, creating a sort of chiastic structure. We see here lallas ischas, literally, the tongue's lord, and then on the final line we have antuhsi lallawansi, to speak to the man, right? And I provided the ABBA chiastic structure here. Examples like 1 and 2 argue for a well-established poetic tradition in Anatolia, dating at least to the 17th century BCE with the Hittites. I argue that the Luwians participated in a similar tradition by providing a new analysis of certain parts of the ritual of Puryani, its formulae, and an example of ring composition in the incantation. The evidence hopefully will convince you all that composers of these rituals produced their incantations using a previously established oral tradition in the lower land in Anatolia. At the top of 3, we should briefly mention the format of these rituals, lest we get confused. If you're digging in the dirt at Hattusa, you will find a clay tablet that will typically contain within it 1 ritual. They are preserved at Hattusa, and when these rituals do show the Luwian language on them, the Luwian language contains the incantations of these texts. The tablets will alternate between Hittite, such that you begin with a chunk of Hittite, you move down to a chunk of Luwian, chunk of Hittite, Luwian, so on and so forth. The Hittite contains lists of ritual implements and will not really be the focus of this talk today. Now, importantly, this format sort of creates the illusion of multiple Luwian incantations within one ritual, but I hope to show that this is not a fitting way to look at these tablets and understand the Luwian within them. Here in 2.1, the following excerpts are from CTH 758, the ritual of Puryani against the impurity of a household. some water. It illustrates the composer's use of ring composition, phonetic figures, grammatical structures, lexical items, and formulae frame individual incantations. And we can see this in 3 below, where I have 3 different rings for you, entitled Imperatives, Evil, and the Talupi lump. I will read the English. Here is the Talupi lump. It has been separated by cutting and crushing and flattened by the rolling tool. Likewise, may he flatten them. May the ritual patron separate them. May the evil matter not be again before the deities of the ritual patron and turn into the defilement of the storm god of the open country. So may this Talupi lump take all of those, presumably, evils, with the adjective poona. There are a few rings here. The first one in 3 is titled Talupi lump. It is the dashed line on the right. It is both an alliterative and a lexical frame. Word initial Z, the affricate Z in Luwian, and the repetition of talupis create both of these rings. Line 8 opens with Zawiyas talupis. This begins the incantation, while the phonetically similar Zas talupis in line 15 completes this frame. The second ring, titled Imperatives on the left side of the passage, is morphological. Line 11 has 2 imperatives, talkudu, flatten, and karstu, cut. Both imperatives take udda, a sundified pronoun, them, as direct object. The pronoun udda, them, both refers to and anticipates the evil matter and defilement. Furthermore, in the same vein, line 15 through 16 has the imperative lallatu, take, with the direct object, poona, all of those evils. Line 11, then, matches the structure of line 15 through 16, creating yet another frame. Direct object plus imperative would be our morphological formula here. I'm going to flip the page, but feel free to keep looking at the Luwian. The third and most important ring that we will look at today is on the right side of the passage, labeled simply evil. It connects the aduwaltsa utarsa, the evil matter, with halisa, the defilement. Throughout the ritual of Pariani, we will see below, these 2 items often co-occur. They occur together, but this is not the case here. Instead, the evil matter and defilement, they lie apart. Crucially, the practitioner and the original composer of this ritual frames the aduwaltsa utarsa and the halisa around the storm god of the open country, the Tarhunt of the open country, and the gods of the ritual patron. For your ease, the gods have been underlined, and the evils to be avoided are in boldface. This structure means that the composer literally traps the gods in a sort of A-B-B-A structure, as we can see in 4. 4 is simply an extract of 3. We have may the evil matter not be again before the deities of the ritual patron and turn into the defilement of the storm god of the open country. We can see quite clearly here that we have 2 bolded elements flanking on either side, the gods mentioned in the ritual. Now, after a brief Hittite interlude, the Luwian incantations resume with my example 5. The English, here lie all kinds of seeds and underground treasures. The ritual patron has handled them with the Khatari tool. He has handled them with the Turi tool. He has handed them over to the storm god of the open country. He gave them to the storm god of the open country so that he, the storm god, treated ritually the evil matter and defilement. May they, the evils, not come back into the presence of the deities of the ritual patron. Now, to my mind, example 5 must be the natural continuation of the excerpt we saw in example 3. For one thing, just a formatting problem again. If the Hittite did not exist on our lovely clay tablet, these 2 incantations would be contiguous. They would appear right next to each other, and we would be forced to read them back to back, as it were. Furthermore, and most strikingly and most important for today, the ring composition between 3 and 5 that I will demonstrate on the next page demands that they be read together in spite of the intervening Hittite, we are not able to separate these Luwian incantations from one another. Turning the page to page 5, we have my example 6. In the interest of time, I will briefly read the translation. Here is the talupi lump. It has been separated by cutting and crushing and flattened by the rolling tool. Likewise, may he flatten them, the ritual patron, may he separate them, the ritual patron. May the evil matter not be again before the deities of the ritual patron, and turn into the defilement of the storm god of the open country. So may this talupi lump take all those evils. Here lie all kinds of seeds and underground treasures. The ritual patron has handled them with the Hatari tool. He has handled them with the Tori tool. He handed them over to the storm god of the open country. He gave them to the storm god of the open country, so that he, the storm god, treated ritually the evil matter and defilement. May they not come back into the presence of the deities of the ritual patron. It should be noted at the top of the page, I have 6 rings for you all. Some we have seen. So starting from the leftmost side of the page, we have Z alliteration, which we saw before in example 3, between Zawias talupis and Zas talupis. Moving inward from there, we have another morphological ring. We have a sort of structure whereby the verses read ablative instrumental, kurmati, khartati, karsamis, for example, in line 9, plus a participle. Moving inwards from there, we have the Tarhunt ring, the storm god of the open country ring. As we jump over to the right side of the passage, moving outwards, we have these solid black lines, which will, for us, denote the evils which are to be avoided. So we have the defilement ring linking Halisa to Halisa. We have the, moving out from there, gods of the ritual patron ring. For REs, the gods are put on dotted lines. And then finally, to the rightmost side of the page, we have the evil matter. Again, I'm going to flip the page. Feel free to continue looking at the Luwian. Example 6 simply lays example 3 and 5, both of which we have already seen, on top of one another. As if the 15 lines of Hittite which come in between these two incantations did not exist at all. Some of the rings resemble those found in 3. So, for example, as I said, the rings Z alliteration, or Z alliteration, and ablative instrumental plus predicate, which occur on the left side of my passage, are phonetic. So we have an initial spelling Z between Zawi and Zawi, and a morphological ring as well. So we have ablative instrumentals plus participles resumed by ablative instrumentals plus participles across the two incantations. But the most important ring in 6 concerns the relationship between the storm god Tarhunt and the gods of the ritual patron found on the dotted lines. On the one hand, and the evils and defilement, the solid lines on the right, on the other. Again, gods are underlined, evils are bold-faced. Already in 3, the first incantation in this ritual, we saw that the gods were surrounded by the afflictions which required the ritual to be performed in the first place. The gods are surrounded and trapped by the evils that the ritual is meant to eliminate. And I have reproduced this example for you here in 7. Again, the evil matter, labeled with I, and Khalisa, labeled with I, surround and frame the two deities, which are marked by J. However, as I said previously, the evil matter and the impurity, they often appear together as a sort of collocation in the ritual of Puriani, just as we saw in example 5, which I have reproduced here, a smaller excerpt of it, in 8. So he gave them to the storm god of the open country, so that the storm god of the open country treated the evil matter and defilement. May they not come back into the presence of the deities of the ritual patron. Across these two incantations, the gods and the evils exist in a sort of chiastic relationship of the type A, B, B, A, which we saw in 3 and 7, examples 3 and 7, and BAAB, the likes of which we saw in 5 and 8. Right? So where we have in example 7, Adawaltsa, Utarsa, then the two gods, and then the impurity or the defilement. In example 8, we very clearly have the two in example 8, we very clearly have a structure whereby Tarhunt comes first. So we have a god, and then we have the Adawaltsa Utarsa, the evil matter, and then we have Khalisa, the defilement, again, one of these evils that are to be pushed away at the end of this ritual. And finally, to sort of close off this chiastic structure and this ring, we have the Masanansa, Shah, and Siskur, the gods of the ritual patron, the person who is performing to have this ritual done on their behalf. These rings, I think, most strikingly tell a sort of story. We could see in example 3 that while the gods were surrounded by the evils, they quite literally, both Tarhunt and the gods of the ritual patron, break out from the influence of the evil matter. They break out from the influence of the defilement which surrounds them at the beginning of the ritual. However, once the ritual patron, quote, hands over the ritual implements to the Tarhunt of the open country, in example 8, line 37, Ata Piata Imrasan Tarhunti. Only then do we see a transition from the ABBA structure of evils surrounding the gods and then evils. Only once these implements are handed over to Tarhunt for treatment do we actually see our sort of idealized end state for this ritual, where we have the structure of the type god, evils in the middle, and gods at the end. So if in the beginning the evils were influencing Tarhunt and the gods of the ritual patron, this reverse in structure to me represents that the gods have now beaten and done away with, the evils in question, right? Thereby helping to purify the ritual patron's house. These rings, they narrate the storm god, the ancestral gods of the ritual patron. This is the top of page 7. And the ritual patron overcoming the evil afflicting the household. This cohesive narrative describes the desired end state of the ritual: purification, banishment of evil. Some brief conclusions. I think that portions of the Lower Land corpus show literary devices that are not unlike those that I showed you with the Song of Nessa in example 1. In Hittite, nor are these incantations unlike other pieces of literature that we find in the Indo-European world, for example, the Rig Veda. One device used by the ritual practitioners to unify their texts is ring composition. The composer of CTH 758, the Ritual of Puriani, used this device to great narrative and stylistic effect. Ring composition allowed the composer to narrate the vanquishing of the evils by the storm god and the gods of the ritual patron, by extension, the household of the ritual patron as well. And of course, as I've already said, this narrative is a sort of microcosm of the ritual itself. The gods vanquish the evil. This is our desired outcome. However, I think this is maybe the most important takeaway. The interpretation above in 4:1 through 4 is only possible if the Ritual of Puriani's composer, indeed its performer, original performer, created these incantations with the goal of making one cohesive narrative, not multiple incantations as we find them, due to an accident of history on the tablets at Hattusa. This narrative had to concern the storm god's victory as it relates to the ritual patron. I think, therefore, we are forced to read the Luwian and Hittite alternation, these chunks of Hittite, these chunks of Luwian. I think we have to read that alternation as simply an artifact of writing at Hattusa, and I do not believe that this alternation would have been a feature of the original incantation's performance. And finally, I believe that this evidence points in one strong direction, that Luwian speakers in the Lower Land were, like the Hittites, no strangers to a tradition of oral performance, where literary devices took center stage, not just for the enjoyment of the composer, not just for the enjoyment of the ritual practitioner, but also to ensure the efficacy of this ritual. Just as we have seen, for example, in Hittite with the Song of Nessa. That is all I have for you today, but thank you very much for your time.